Okay,
All right, I'm
so
gonna take
we're
my
live.
speaker off.
Okay, sounds good. So we are live. This is Four Corners, Nuggets podcast. We're talking bad words. Okay, that's okay. We can do this. Welcome back to Four Corners. We are live to talk about the Denver Nuggets. Probably some trade talk. Probably some roster construction talk. Probably some lineup decisions. I guess questions that need to be answered. So I am excited to see you guys. It's always good to chat with you. First introduction, you know him, you love him. He is a purveyor of ball, coach slash draft scout analyst. CT Fazio 24. What's going on?
What's up, Ray and Pete? How you guys doing? Always great to top on Four Corners and talk Nuggets with you guys, and appreciate the kind words in the intro there. So, looking forward to catching up on some Nuggets talk.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Always good to see you. Coming in all the way from Homer, Alaska. Um, Peter Buckets since '88. How you doing?
Doing well, just shoveling some snow, staying dry. Nuggets are undefeated this year. Life's good.
Have you seen the sun today?
Yes, for about 6 hours.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad you're staying alive.
I am.
Yes, yes. So basically, it's been a while. I would say at least a month or so, and I feel like a lot of some things have changed in the Nuggets universe. Some things have stayed the same. Um, I want to start off with this. Let me mute myself on Spaces. But I want to start off with this. So earlier on the season, and maybe you guys can go first, so that I don't want to alter anyone's takes preemptively. But earlier on the season, we had a lot of thoughts and ideas mostly about like the Calvin Booth agenda, and I wanted to maybe open up with you guys' takes on that in terms of like where you are. Do you feel the same way you felt before? Does anything that you've seen so far make you more or less confident in what's happening? Um, Peter, I remember you having like stronger feelings maybe than us two about it. So I'm gonna let you start.
Well, I feel like Calvin put Malone in a position of the young guys have to play. So he accomplished that, right? I mean, CB starting, Peyton and Julian are coming off the bench. I think Peyton has been playing a little bit better lately. He's solid in defense, solid in transition. Julian seems like he's starting to get in a rhythm offensively. Can't guard anybody right now. I mean, he's one of the worst defenders in the NBA. Statistically, I'm not even just like saying that like I just think he's bad. Like he's actually like one of the worst defenders in the NBA. So that can't really get much worse, but you need it to get better if he's going to be a real rotation piece. So it's just hard because Calvin has put the team in a position where you've got a 3-time MVP who's 30 years old in his prime, and you're like trying to develop young guys. So I just don't really understand how it makes sense for like the rest of the roster, but they are playing better. So, I mean, I don't know if he's like wants them just to keep getting better and then maybe they'll make a run this year or next position themselves better for next year, or is he just trying to like increase trade value right now? It's very confusing.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that. CT, how about you? How do you feel about I mean, obviously, I have my own thoughts, but how do you feel about that sort of dichotomy between the the infusion of youth in the roster and the constant, I think, persistent goal of the team, which is to win championships?
Yeah, I think it's always been a kind of a slippery slope as far as the balance is concerned. Um, I think the plan itself could work for the most part, but I think Booth has whiffed on a vast majority of the free agent signings that he's signed players to, which I think was a bit of an issue. as far as easing some of those guys into the rotation, having some sort of competition for those guys as well to play with, and he kind of basically cleared the deck um, for those guys to play. So I think it could work. And like I said before, the CB factor has already worked out. Now it's when you add a couple more of those guys into the mix is where it gets a bit more tricky. We're seeing that now, like Peter said, with Julian's been a bit more up and down. Watson even has been a bit more up and down. And like I said, those guys are like end of the first round picks. So like to expect those guys to return rotational value, I think right away is a bit far fetched. But again, this is the path that they have chosen. So I can see why some people are a bit angry about that decision. But assuming that you want to keep the core four in Nuggets uniform for the long haul, that's kind of how it had to have panned out. And again, who knows? Maybe it could work toward the end, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But it's obviously been this year a lot more up and down, just because the roster's been kind of wiped out with like rotation guys, other than Russ, and somehow a DeAndre sighting has come about since Zeke and Dario have not returned rotation value so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, I would say more than a sighting, he is seemingly he has won the job. It is his job to lose. I always am going to question someone his age playing every night, but it seems to be going the least badly, maybe, of the group. So I got to accept it. It is what it is. And to your point, I do think, keeping the scoreboard, the Dario signing, I get it in theory, right? I think there's a lot of understandable. We've been looking for years saying, okay, well, can you find a backup center that is like a bench version of facsimile for Jokic, that someone you can run DHOs with and someone you can sort of keep the same format of offense around. At the same time, part of me wonders, is a bench version of Jokic an NBA player? I don't know. Dario is definitely challenged. Probably not, because it's not like, and okay. Do we want to? So I feel like with Jamal, it works. It doesn't work anywhere else. But with Jamal specifically, like those two together are positive. It's just, is that a positive with anyone else?
Talking about DeAndre?
I'm talking about Dario. Like with Dario, he's a
Dario.
positive on the court with Jamal. It
Yeah,
just so happens that
he's been like
not
so
a
far out
positive.
of my mind. It seems like no one's given up on him.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I honestly think for me, I think Malone. I think that's honestly one of Malone's most difficult traits that he has. Unfortunately, is that he gives up on guys too quickly. Like if there's anywhere to pinpoint for Malone that he has, some sort of, I don't know if you want to say weakness in his coaching or if that's like one of his kind of spots that I don't agree with, as it he gives up on guys too quickly. I think with Dario, you could probably play him with Jamal and Mike and AG. I think that would work. Because again, like DeAndre is not going to be able to play the full year. There's just no way he's going to be an everyday bench big, unless he turns back the clock somehow. But I just don't think he's going to be an everyday bench big. And Sarge is going to have to get reintegrated into the rotation eventually again, in a limited capacity, I would say too. But he's eventually going to have to play, I think, some sort of minutes, whether it's spot minutes or like bench minutes at some point.
Yeah, I mean, CT, I think he will get another crack at some point, but I don't know if that's fair to say Malone gives up on guys too quickly, because after the first like 3 games, I feel like everybody was saying like, get this guy out of here because he was playing so bad. So I kind of felt like he had to bench Sarge because the minutes were so horrible that they needed to right the ship.
He did, but I think it was mainly because he was playing with Russ. Like you saw those couple games where he played with Jamal and Mike in like the Grizzlies game and a couple of the other games that they played in. And he wasn't like great, but he also wasn't like tanking his minutes, which had happened the first couple of games. So I think
That's true.
like DeAndre, I just don't think is like he's not an everyday option, or he's at least for now until the playoffs. Like it's just not possible. I think it would be
Right.
like overbearing for him as well. Like as a 35, how old is he? 36, 36-year-old big to play like every day.
Yeah, I think he's 36.
Yeah, and especially with AG, he's not even back either, so can't even play him at backup 5 for now.
And I think he really wants someone that is an everyday player. Like I don't think he wants to do as much as it makes it would, at least the way I think about it, it would make sense if you're like, okay, DeAndre, you can play tonight, and then we're going to give you a game or two off, and you can play again. And Dario will play you when Jamal is leading the bench unit, but otherwise we're going to go to other options. And okay, well, I don't know if there's any way Zeke is going to be a positive. I mean, we've had that conversation a lot. I don't
He's out.
Anything I'm going to tell you isn't going to happen. Like I'm like, oh yeah, if Zeke could play the 4 specifically, where he's only ever been good ever, he's never going to play the 4. That just seems to be another thing that, talking about things Malone is not interested in. That's something he's not interested in. So I don't really see that happening. So it's and with the Vlaco injury and with the Daron Holmes injury, it's been tough. It's tough sledding for them. But DeAndre's been fine, I feel like. I don't know how long that's going to last, but he's been fine. How do we feel about Hunter Tyson and Jalen Pickett? Are they NBU players?
No.
Hey man,
Tyson, no.
I'm here to you asking you questions.
Tyson, I would say no. Just because if you like watch him play against any physical player, and I think they also fabricated his height. He's definitely not 6'7" or 6'8" because CB is taller than him, so he's got to be like 6'5". From my
Hunter Tyson?
Hunter Tyson, yeah, there's no way he's 6'7" or 6'8". But I just think for him, like anytime he goes against physicality or like playoff teams, it's just like a complete disaster. Pickett, I honestly am a bit surprised at his play lately. I'm not going to say he's playable against playoff teams, but he's looked better. He's looked serviceable against certain teams, which is what you want. I think the baseline for those guys is like, can you play meaningful regular season minutes against, bad teams? At least that would help. Like you could have guys eat minutes against bad teams. Like same thing I say about Westbrook too. With their fans, his fans have been in my mentions constantly over the past I don't know however many months. But I've been saying lately too that I think Russ is just a great bad team slayer. Like just look at all the games that like they've played lately against the Jazz, against the Hawks, all these teams. Like Russ played really well. You need a guy like that who's willing to like go against these bad teams and like smoke them. And he's been doing it. So if you can get that
honestly,
production for those guys, that'd be good.
The Nuggets have been missing that, right? They don't have the killer instinct guys. They always play down to their competition, right? That's been our biggest gripe with this group. But Russ doesn't care. He's like, "Oh, we're playing basketball tonight. I want to destroy everybody."
Right.
Yeah, I think when you talk about those three, for what the role that I think what is expected of them, talking about a guy who's making $3 million, $1 million, $1.5 million here or there, minutes eating between Hunter and Tyson. Sorry, not Hunter and Tyson. Hunter and Jalen. I think they're meeting that threshold of like, hey, you can play Aaron Gordon less. You can play Jamal Murray less, although that's not really happening. But we'll get to that in a moment. And I think for Russ in particular, he's adding a dynamic to the team that they didn't really have before. They're leading the team and leading the league in pace. I don't know if they're leading the league in pace at this point, but I know they're top 5. They're drawing a lot more fouls. They're playing with a lot more pace. And, with the starters, which is actually, I think, something we probably should get into, he is looking like he kind of mimics a lot of what Bruce Brown did in Denver. And at the same time, maybe even has a little bit more of that comfortability in being the primary guy, where with Bruce Brown, it maybe felt a little bit more. Maybe it felt a little bit more janky. I don't want to say janky because Bruce was very effective, but I think it was kind of clear he wasn't that natural floor general maybe you're looking for. But yeah, so I want to maybe come into some of the comments a little bit before we get to the like who should be the starter conversation. First of all, Pete, you have a fan and that says you're wrong. Pickett Island is growing. Okay, I'm here. All right, Adam Mars is here. Okay, Rope is here now. Okay, please tell that geek Pete to never, and it rhymes. And it rhymes to never disrespect Jalen. The demon Pickett again. The Pickett
spelled his
I
name
didn't know
wrong.
was. That's okay. That's okay.
Well, that's
Pickett Hive moves. That's all I'm saying.
I've got a player comp for you guys. All right. Jalen Pickett reminds me of a not aggressive Monte Morris. That's how he plays basketball. So if you think that's the winning player, then cool.
Was Monte Morris ever an aggressive player?
Yeah, he like went hard on the pick and roll. If it was open, he passed it to Plumlee for a dunk, and if nobody guarded him, he pulled up and hit the elbow jumper. Same way he's playing this year in Phoenix.
Yeah, but Pickett, he stopped putting his back to the basket now. He actually faces forward.
Wow.
Okay.
It's like a quarterback finally looking past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
There's your football analogy for the day.
Jamal does the same thing. I need to leave me alone.
I'm just saying, not just compare Jamal Murray to Jalen Pickett.
They're not the same, but you're talking about that specifically. Jamal does that a lot. Stop playing with me. But yeah, we also got
that doesn't help Jalen.
It doesn't help Jalen. Well, Jalen's not a top 6 prospect gonna get to take all the shots. You know, he's not that guy. So it's like that's the real difference. But I'm saying he's not the first guard in the world to ever come into the league, you know, leaning away from the basket more often than he probably should be. Grace chimes in that having stability at the backup center position, I think, has been a big important thing for the volatility that you get with like Peyton Watson, and I also kind of agree with that. Talking about Peyton Watson, so he's mostly been playing the 4, right? I think I talked about that last episode. I don't love that. I don't think that's his best position. And I understand you don't want to cater to this guy who's not your core player, not highly paid, not highly touted in any sort of way. At the same time, though, Grace tweeted out something else that I think is very relevant. He's like top 96 percentile pick and roll ball handler coverage. Like he's elite in taking guards out of the equation. And is the backside help there? Is that perfect? It's not. Is the team oriented stuff there? It's not.
Who, DJ?
No, I'm talking about Peyton Watson at this point.
Oh, sorry.
But what I think DJ has done in a lot of ways is he's kind of mitigated what I really hate about Peyton Watson at the 4 is that at least DJ is collecting a lot of these rebounds. DJ is orchestrating and organizing on the back end and being that communicator. And is he always fleet-footed? No, but at the very minimum, he's helping these other guys. And that's really what the center position is in a lot of ways, is that defensive quarterbacking. And so whether it's Hunter Tyson or Peyton Watson or Julian Strawther, who is terrible on defense, like I can't really I've been doing a thing where I've been grading the games. I'm a little bit behind on this because of the holidays, but I've been grading the games in terms of who's making good plays, who's making great plays on just a play-by-play basis. And I can't tell you how many times Julian Strawther just like gives up a basket, gives up a rebound, gives up, He's trying though. It's not an effort thing. It's not that he doesn't care. It's just he's not good at it. He fouls a lot, even when he does try. I think that foul rate is kind of reflective of that. But DJ does provide some stability. And Grace also mentioned, like, how long is this going to last? I don't know. But DJ has kind of helped stabilize the bench somewhat, where I think we used to feel like the bench is always losing minutes by 5 points, 10 points, 15 points, 20 points at a time. And I just don't feel like that's been as much of an issue lately. So
yeah, I think, for sure. I think DJ, shout out to Grace and Will. I was just on their show a couple days ago. We were talking about like the bench lineups there as well. I think DJ has given them a structure, which honestly was the bench just lacked that structure the whole year. You can just run pick and roll with him. And he's a guy who's like a lob threat, so you kind of have like a signature action you can run. I think Malone's actually incorporated a good amount of plays as well between him and Jamal and Julian to kind of like run the bench. And if you have like Julian and Mike out there, you can really space the floor out for that pick and roll as well, considering like the lack of shooting. At least those are your two best shooters. And you have Jamal out there as well, who's shooting much better as of late compared to his early numbers in the year. So like the Nuggets probably need like a decent lob threat, whether that's like moving forward. I don't think they should trade for another backup big, because I think AG, when he comes back, is going to play that role in the playoffs. And Great said it here with like Peyton at the 4. There's really nobody else, and like Tyson's not a 4. He just is like basically eating minutes because there's nobody else out there. But just wait on until Blackout comes back in February after that knee surgery. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
He's coming back.
It's supposed to come back in February.
I kind of wish we could see PJ Hall play.
I
I'm not
agree.
saying he's good. I'm not. Again, this is kind of this. It's the same tier of player, right? We're not talking about guys who are going to change the playoff rotation. That's not what we're talking about. But it's December/January/February, and we're looking for guys who can fill time and eat minutes and make it so Aaron Gordon doesn't have to rush himself back from a calf injury. And how many fours
played every game.
How many fours do you actually have? Yeah, you would like to give Mike a night off. And like, how many guys? I kind of trust Hunter at this point. I think Michael Malone also trusts Hunter, which is weird because I don't get it. I don't. Well, I get it because I like him, right? But I don't get what is the mental algorithm that produces a Michael Malone guy. I've really lost.
Don't mess up defensively. That's basically the baseline.
Yeah. Maybe that's
play
it.
hard.
It's just like play hard. He loves gritty guys, and the way Hunter's diving on the floor, I think he really appreciates that. Doesn't matter if he's good or not.
Yeah, his jump shot has abandoned him, and all Tyson has been doing is like getting rebounds and playing hard, which is like the baseline of what he's contributed out there.
But it's also like, how many times does he even shoot? Like,
yeah, maybe like a couple times a game, like
2 or 3 times a game, like twice a game. Like if you told me he took 10 shots, I think he would make more shots, right? But I don't think anyone's respecting it whether he makes it or misses it anyway. But yeah, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. That's nice. He doesn't turn the ball over a ton or dribble the ball for 15 seconds and then throw up. Did y'all see what Julius Randle did the other day?
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah, that was a great clip.
Yes, it's if I can find it, I will show it. But Julius Randle, he's kind of being their sort of super bench guy right now, and there's something to the responsibility that I think comes with leading a unit, and that is very much, yep, this is it. Okay, I am going to share. It's very much a responsibility of playing in control, not being overly selfish, at least when it's appropriate. If you're that much of a bucket, the leeway is a little bit higher, right? But in general, you want to be someone who, how I put this, yeah. So this is the play. You're doing these sorts of turnovers, the live ball turnovers. that you're seeing these types of things, those are the ones that kill your team. The ones that go from, okay, now you have the ball, and now you just gave up an easy layup on the other end. All that is to say, maybe it is that the guys he likes, your Hunter Tysons, your maybe a PJ Hall, I don't know. But Jalen Pickett for sure, they're not making those mistakes. And I think that's going to earn them more opportunities in the future, just in these sort of low stakes settings. But yeah, also the Hive is growing. Booty ball here to stay. Show going on. I'm just saying. I'm not always right, but who would have thought?
He's looked decent. Like I'll admit it. He's looked decent. And I was out on him after that summer league performance, which was one of the worst I've ever seen. But
that is fair.
Yeah, if he can have a game where this year where he's, like I said, competent in playing minutes that he can contribute, I think that's the baseline. That is what you need. Can he play in the playoffs? I mean, I doubt it.
I don't doubt it. That's not what we're looking for right now.
Right.
But
you're just looking for a guy to eat minutes in the regular season, and he's done that so far.
Yeah, and in fairness to Jalen, summer league is about getting buckets. Like that's not really his atmosphere.
Yeah, but he looked like
true,
not NBA player level of bad though. It was looking really bleak.
The bigger thing, he looked unconfident, and I think that was because you watch his film and you look at this player and he can do a bunch of different things. He has the vision, he has some poise, he's not terrible defensively because he's a little bit longer than Monte was. And you look at that summer league game and you don't see the same player, I think in big part because he just looks kind of if you ever seen somebody shook, I would point to that game and point to Jalen Pickett. So I get being out on him in that moment, but part of me was also like, okay, well, maybe if he just had a little bit more, go see a therapist or something. I don't know.
It's funny. He had a couple of plays recently where I think one time he had a cut to the basket and Jokic fed him for a layup. And then there was another time when he was in the dunker's spot and he got it pretty much wide open. And I was like worried he was going to miss it because he's just so far away from the rim, like even when he jumps up there. Mm-hmm. But he got it in there.
He has long arms. He's a positive wingspan guy. But I do kind of want to touch on. So Rope comes back with so you guys think the young guys will actually contribute? I kind of think CB is going to be useless offensively in the playoffs, and so is P-Watt, while Strother is going to be unplayable defensively. Maybe I want to start with the Christian Braun situation. I like Christian Braun. Peter, I'm sure you don't hate Christian Braun, but I feel like he was your guy more than anyone else, at least here.
Yep.
How have you felt about Christian's play of late? Because I feel like I have a theory, but I'm interested in what you have to say.
Yeah, I think he started the season off red hot. Top tier percentile outcome that you could hope for is him as a starter to start out the year in his first 15 games or so around there. He was shooting the cover off the ball. He was looking really good in the half court. And I just think it's probably part of a slump that he's going through. This is his first time as a starter on a playoff caliber team. And he's probably had to balance a bit more of the defensive aspect of the floor as well as the offense now. So I cut him a little bit of slack for that. But yeah, he's definitely slumping as of late. He hasn't made a lot of threes. He's getting mainly all of his buckets in transition or through cuts, in the half court. So yeah, he's going to have to hit shots in the playoffs for sure. That's just the bottom line is he's going to have to knock down threes in order to stay on the floor. And the Nuggets are already down so many guys, as far as a playability standpoint in the playoffs, that he's going to have to play. But yeah, I would just chalk it up to a slump for now. Did he lose confidence? No, I don't think so. I think CB's always a confident player. He's always a gamer, a competitor. So I would just chalk it up to a slump for now. I think he'll bounce back soon. But yeah, it's something that's I'm not shocked that he hit a wall, over the past couple of games.
Peter, how about you? Do you feel, I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most worried and 1 being the least worried, where do you sit as far as like the Christian Brown stock and where he is and where he might be going into the playoffs?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I guess I'll probably say like 5. I mean, I think it all depends on the matchup, you know. The Nuggets are just different this year. I mean, Christian's always been a good defender on like wing players. You know, he did a pretty good job on Anthony Edwards last year, I thought. But, you know, he struggles with the quick guys, the jitterbug guys. He can't really stay in front of like John Moran or De'Aaron Fox.
Right.
I mean, most guys can't, but at least KCP was a little bit better at it, right? But yeah, the offense is probably it's pretty concerning because I mean he's shooting high percentage, he's getting cuts, but I mean they just don't guard him at all, you know, and it's not like he's shooting an awful percentage from 3, but he doesn't even take them. That's what's concerning. So it's kind of like you really can't play 4-on-5 and win playoff games. So I kind of think it was like a miscalculation by Booth of like, here's a guy who, you know, came in, contributed right away. He's a good bench player, but just because you're a good bench player doesn't mean you're going to be a good starter. And so I don't think he's been bad, but I just don't think he really fits this starting 5 as cleanly as like the KCP type of player did.
100%.
So yeah, I mean, there's still time, CT. I mean, he's had some games where he's hitting 3s, but you can tell he doesn't really want to do that. So I don't know. I just feel like they got a little more juice with Russ starting, and then maybe you bring CB off the bench to get a spark. But I don't know. We'll see. I kind of feel like the deck's going to get shuffled at some point before the trade deadline, and we'll get like another guard in there.
Yeah, I think with just to respond to that, I think with CB, as far as the Russ conversation is concerned, I don't like the fit of Russ and AG together with the starting 5. I think that's going to tank the spacing. And again, Russ has played really well. Does he deserve to start? I mean, definitely has a case for it. The Russ fans are not delusional in saying he's got a case, but I think Christian fits better with what this other 4 guys bring to the table. I'm just not a fan of Russ and AG out there together. I just think it's really, really poor spacing and just going to be too much pressure in the half court for guys like Mike and Jamal and Yoke to really find seams in the defense to score. But yeah, I mean KCP. The problem is really with what's going on is that KCP's absence was not replaced. Like
Right.
CB is good defensively on a number of guys. You know, wing players he's good on. Ant was of course one famous guy that he was good on. And he's good on wings. But when it comes to the quick guards like a Steph or a Dame or a Fox, you know what I mean? Like those guys have cooked him a lot, and even getting around screens. And that's something that I scouted, you know, going back when he was in the draft, is that, you know, he's very tall and he's got some bulk to him at 6'6", so it's tough for him to navigate screens like that. So I think like his plate is really full as far as like the number of guys that he has to check this year. And I think he's going to get better at it as he learns the game and becomes more of an everyday kind of guy. But I do think that KCP's loss has really not only affected the perimeter defense, but it's affected Jokic as well. Because I think Jokic has looked really bad defensively for the most part this year. Not his fault entirely, but I do think Jokic does probably get some of the chunk of the blame for it as well.
I do think that's a big part of it. At least in because the style of play that they're adopting right now is one of if DeAndre is down there, I get it. You're not going to do anything else but this. But with Jokic as well, they're parking the big, 5 feet in front of the basket and saying, well, okay, whatever the screen is, go over it for the most part.
Right.
That's what I'm seeing. And that works okay with KCP because he's so good at navigating the screens. But I think this is a case where I really would like to see a bit more, try some different things and how they approach these things. Because when you talk about Jamal and Christian and Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon and Jokic, I think even like a if not switch everything, at least maybe switch 1 through 4, but maybe even switch everything, honestly, in the sense of how you've got a lot more size, you got more flexible defenders, or at the very least play Jokic at the level. Obviously, there's reasons they're not playing him at the level. It's an energy thing, but if you can present a playoff scenario or a crunch time scenario, and that's something you can go to, it'd be nice to see them try it once or twice, or maybe even lineup flexibility wise. It's one thing I do like about Peyton Watson. Christian Brown's like 220, like 225. Peyton's, this is a drawback, but in this case, a positive. He's probably 200 pounds, maybe 210. And I think he is a little bit
Not
better at
210.
getting around. I'm trying to be generous. He's a lot lighter, and so that doesn't go his way when he's pinned up against the basket, when he's trying to box out, when he's posting up or being posted up, I should say. But in these sort of chase guys over screen situations, he's not beating the screen, but at the very least, he's not a guy. He's gonna be behind you, and he's not a guy you want behind you if you're a guard attacking the rim. So I'd like to see them just try different stuff. I mean, I also feel like he's took a step back. Do you remember the game Christian sat out where he had the back injury?
Yeah.
I feel like he's been a little bit slower since then. Like that's just something I think about. When we're talking about back injuries, usually they're not one game things. They're not instant. You know, Jamal Murray talked about a little bit earlier. Everybody is dealing with something. I have to wonder if Christian Brown feels a little bit less confident, a little bit less explosive, a little bit less springy for that reason, if nothing else. And you'll still need him, like, right? So I think he'll be back. I'm not worried about, you know, if you don't play him one game or if you don't start him one game, then he'll be out of the rotation. Like Grace mentioned, Ant comes off the screens now, so it's still a case where you want him out there, but you're going to need multiple layers and multiple avenues of playing defense.
Just last thing on Christian before we wrap up and move on. I just want to be clear. Like, I'm still high on him. I still like him as a player, but I like him as like a 20 to 25 minute game guy, the way he was used last year. I don't think you really want him being a 35 minute starting two guard on a team that's trying to win a championship.
It's fair.
That's fair. So there is a question, right? I do think you start to hear the rumblings, not just from obviously Russell Westbrook has his own fandom and it is very specific. And it's not exactly something that is only going to be in Denver. You know, everywhere Russ goes, he's going to have people saying he should start, that he himself is the GOAT, and so on. But I'm gonna bring up a quote we got from Twitter. Shout out to anyone who tweets at us and or comments in our videos. We really appreciate that. Everybody in the comment section right now. But I'm going to present and read I don't think it's angry enough that I need to read it dramatically, but I do want to read this one from Matthew Kimura. That there's been a lot of talk lately that Rush should be a permanent starter. Is there anything that would convince you to do it? And if we win against Boston next week on national TV, the noise is going to get extra loud. So that's something I think about as like a choice Malone is leaning towards, especially with the minute, you know, talking about minute totals. Russ is playing a lot of minutes. You know, he's playing a lot closer to starters minutes than a bench guy, than like a fourth, than a sixth, seventh, eighth guy. Peter, do you think we should start Russ?
I mean, I'm fine with it. It's been better than I expected, but I guess here's what's kind of awkward to me, right? So Russ comes in, understands he's going to be the backup, you know, gets off to a pretty good start, has to start some because of injuries. He gets that. If once everybody's healthy, if Malone makes a change and says, all right, you're starting now, if he goes through a bad stretch and then benches him, I could see Russ not liking that. So I'd kind of rather him just go with what's been working, which is, you know, the opening night starters with Russ off the bench. And then if Russ is playing well, you can play him more or even close with him. He's had some games where he closed with Russ. So I don't know. I've always been on the side of like I think starting versus coming off the bench is overrated. Like Manu never started for the Spurs, and he was like their third best player. So
Better question.
you can still be a big time player on your team without starting, but obviously we know there's politics and stuff. I don't know. I just feel like Russ has already accepted the bench role. So unless it's actually going to make your team better, I don't know why you would switch it permanently. But I trust Malone. Whatever he does, I think it'll probably make sense.
So CT, I think you commented on this a little bit earlier. And to Peter's point, starting is a little bit more of an honorific than I think the most important thing. I think the most important thing is actually who closes these games. How do you feel about the fact that Russ, on a lot of nights, whether he's starting or not, is closing these games, is kind of, if Denver has a quote unquote death lineup, you're that sort of strongest punch, as it were, that you bring out at that time, that Russ is going to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think so yeah, I agree with Pete where I think I wouldn't start him just because I don't like the fit with AG in the starting lineup. But I actually do think that the Russ closing minutes has actually burned the Nuggets a couple times already this year. Look at that Timberwolves game. There's been a couple games this year where Malone closed with Russ and they lost. And it wasn't entirely his fault. It was mainly because teams just didn't respect his jump shot and they just let him shoot and he missed shots to like ice the game. And then the other team would come back and make a shot and win. So that's for me where it's like I would rather trust CB out there hitting jump shots than Russ. That's just for me to that. Or you can close with a Watson. Like I think Watson should get some looks as a closer over Christian. I think it's a possibility that should be explored. Because last year I don't think the Nuggets had a lot of lineup optionality as we saw in the playoffs, and I think Malone's going to have to get to a place where he could find multiple lineups that either have worked in the past or can work and can not really be solved that quickly going to the playoffs. So yeah, I think Malone obviously likes his vets and he'll close with Russ a good amount. Sometimes I think he's wrong. Sometimes I think maybe he's right, but I just think he's got to weigh that balance a bit more carefully.
Ray, can I add one more thing about what I like about Russ?
Sure.
With him starting or just anytime he plays with Jamal, I really enjoy the fact that he's always attacking, right? And even though he's been passing to Jokic a lot, which works, I feel like Russ does such a good job of getting the defense on their heels that when Murray gets the ball, he's catching the ball now in a lot more advantageous positions than he used to. I mean, obviously he's still, yeah, and obviously he's still comfortable with the ball up top and like playing the 2-man game with Jokic and stuff. But I just think energy wise, I've kind of noticed that. I know it's like a topic every year, like, oh, when is Jamal going to be in shape? Like that's starting to get there, but it really is an advantage to like let Jamal kind of chill for the first quarter. They feed Michael out in the first quarter, which is smart. And then Jamal still has a lot of juice left in the fourth quarter. If you guys remember, one of the smartest things the Timberwolves did was they were hounding Murray like 94 feet from the basket. So,
right.
Whether he was dealing with an injury or not, like you can't tell me that Jamal Murray wasn't tired at the end in those fourth quarters. So, I think just having another guy that can handle the ball and put pressure on the defense is huge for Jamal in fourth quarter of games.
Yeah, I think this comes back to the question as well. Is if you look at a guy like a Derek White, right? He would have been the ideal fifth starter for the Nuggets because you have a guy who's a good defender who can, work around Jokic and Murray and Mike, but also he's a good shooter now and he can handle the ball, right? Like I even think of like a Keon Ellis, right, as like the worst case scenario type. Like at least he fits the ilk of what the Nuggets need.
Like a poor man's Derek White.
A poor man Derek White, because as good as I think Christian is, and I think Christian's a very valuable player for the Nuggets and what they need to do as far as winning, I think that the skill set question is a concern because if you look at KCP last year, right, he brought shooting to the table and he brought perimeter defense to the table. He didn't bring playmaking. and that's where the Nuggets lost it in against the Wolves because Murray was getting hounded. Gordon was good as like a secondary release guy, but his jump shot was hit or miss toward the end of that series as well. So if you had like your fifth guy as more of like a on ball secondary / creator type who's a good defender, I think that's where Russ comes in now. But I guess
Yeah.
my only concern with Russ is when it comes to the playoffs is how is he going to fare? Is he going to be able to play? Is
Yeah.
he going to be able to, withstand playoff team pressure? Last year he didn't. I mean, he's going to have to this year, but I think that's just really the bottom line for where the Nuggets' fifth starter question comes down to.
And CT, just adding on to the point you made about Derek White, just a larger basketball point in general, I think is really interesting. I forgot who said it to me like a week or two ago, but the 3-and-D archetype of player is actually kind of dying because if you look at the Celtics and you look at the Thunder, what are their rules, right? It's like they want guys that can pass, dribble, and shoot. So
Right.
it's like now, everybody can shoot, right? Like all teams are shooting three. So shooting is basically like a prerequisite for the NBA at this point, unless you're like Giannis level good, right? And then, they want guys that can defend and then hopefully can dribble as well. The guys that can't dribble anymore, there's less and less of them. It's like you're pretty much going to be playing with like a LeBron or a Luka or a Harden type, right? Like those are the kinds of teams you're going to have to be on if you're just a Dorian Finney-Smith type. Because those kinds of guys are getting exposed more in the playoffs now than they used to.
So
I think it's a good point.
I'm not totally out on Russ with the starters, like in Christian's place. I'm maybe somewhere between somewhere between CT and where Rope is. I think CT is a lot more cool with Russ with the starters. I mean, Aaron has shot really well. I think that's a big part of that. That helps a lot. And Russ, when he's confident and he's responsible, which is a big caveat, I think. Sometimes hits threes that you're like, oh wow, that's really nice in rhythm, that kind of thing.
He's been more in check with Jokic. Like
Yeah.
he's been way more in check with Jokic, which again is if that's a trade-off that they have to take. I mean, maybe then it works, But I do think too that Russ is working with the starters mainly because he's playing besides Mike and Jokic in the front court. You have a wide open paint. Mike's a dead eye shooter. Jokic is shooting dead eye this year from three on volume too. So I think that's really what it comes down to is why he's actually fit in really well with that unit. And that's why with AG, I'm a bit more pessimistic about it. But
I'm also concerned about the length of some of these stints that Russ is playing.
16 minutes in consecutively.
Yeah, when he's coming in the third quarter and finishing the game,
He doesn't look tired though.
Okay, sure. Well,
he's a freak.
He's never going to look tired. But I think what you get when you get to that, like, oh, I've been playing for 14 minutes, 12, 14, 16 minutes straight, you're not shooting as well. You're not as sharp on the little things, on
Fair.
so much of, especially as a shooter, so much of being a shooter is like your cardio and how exhausted you are. If you're like huffing and puffing, it's hard to have that stability. So if Michael Malone wanted to close with Russ, I would understand it. I just need less, and this is a little bit true of Jamal as well. If there's one criticism I have of him this year, it's like, why are we seeing these games where they're getting 39 minutes apiece and it's like 16, 18-minute stretches, and they can both play point guard, to be honest. Like, I don't think it's necessary for them to. I'm happy they're developing chemistry. I think there's room, like we talked about, to explore a little bit more optionality in some of these lineups. And I think there's something to the responsibility of a coach to not overplaying your guys, especially guys who get a little weird. Look, Russ has always gotten a little weird at the end of games and making decisions, and I think being tired is part of that. And Jamal has all types of like overuse injuries, and he doesn't talk about it a lot, but if it's like whether it's shin splints or plantar fasciitis or just rest on recovery on his knee, I would just like to see a little bit more, being a little bit more judicious with how you use them, because it is nice if they can show up to the end of the games and the end of the season fresh. That's
For
all I
sure.
need. Is Jokic a bad defender?
This year, yeah.
This year, yeah, for sure. I see like a lot of the people on, whether it's in the media or whoever else, just like defending his defense, and it's kind of just indefensible to me to call him a good defender. Is he a smart defender? Yeah, I think so, for sure. Especially when he's playing at the level, you know, he has quick hands. He can move his feet a bit as well, and he's just a big body. And also too, like he can really rebound the ball, which is important. Like defensive rebounding is a part of defense. So he has good aspects of defense, but putting him in space is just not, you know, something that you can really work around, because the Nuggets defense is based on Jokic's deficiencies. That's the defense. The scheme is based around his deficiencies. That's why we put 2 on the ball every time we go against a guard, basically, that can shoot pull-ups. And I think too, I don't know if you read, Matt Moore had like a article today about some of the defense, which I thought was really good. Just like Jokic has not been willing to like go out to the 3-point line and contest shots. Like he's not playing high enough at the level. He's not even in drop, like has not been good enough either. And I don't like Jokic in a drop, but I know at the level it takes a lot out of him to play consistently there, because he's constantly, you know, chasing guards on the perimeter. But no, I wouldn't say he's a good defender. He's a smart defender who has some traits you can work around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jokic is definitely saving his energy on defense. You know, and Adam Morris has made a good point of like he's going to try harder in the playoffs. He can do it then, which he can. But to me, like, even though the Nuggets have been playing better lately, like to me, this team is, you know, still not close. In Jokic's own words, nowhere close to where they need to be. And you look at the Knicks game, they get blown out. And then you look at the Cavs game, and that game was so frustrating to me because the Cavs were getting absolutely whatever they wanted. You know, like I understand if you can't guard one player that's really good, or if you're having really, really struggling in one area. But the problem with that game is the Nuggets weren't taking away anything. The Cavs were getting up all their threes, and then every time that the Nuggets forced a pass inside the 3-point line, Jared Allen had like an easy 4-foot shot, which he's always been good at. So it's like,
right.
I mean, the Cavs are really good. Don't get me wrong, but I just feel like if you're playing an elite team, you have to make a choice. Are we gonna pack the paint and make them just make like 33s on us, or can we actually like defend the 3-point line better? Because that game, the Nuggets just didn't guard anything.
Yeah, that's Grace brings that up a lot too, which is a good point. Like the Nuggets should pick, what are they going to give up, and not just be like basically defenseless team,
Well, and they've been playing so much better defense in the second half, right? It's like they play these high scoring first halves, and then you saw against the Hawks they turned it on in the third quarter. Like I don't know if this team has a defensive switch coming in the playoffs. I don't think that's really a good idea to get in that kind of habit. I mean, you've heard the players talk about it's all like communication. I think that's part of it, but I really do think it's the roster construction. I don't think they have quick guards, and when you don't have quick guards, you're going to be on your heels a lot and having guys blow by you. And like you said, that Jokic has no chance if a guard has a running start on him. So I don't know how you fix it. I kind of feel like the Nuggets have just been winning with offense, which, can work in the regular season.
Yeah,
but it's going to be interesting to see what this team decides it wants to be and wants to do at the deadline, because it sounds to me like they're not going to move Mike. I mean, obviously things can always change last minute. I personally wouldn't move him. I know CT, you're high on him. Nuggets, this is probably the biggest like divisive thing in Nuggets Nation is like, do you move Mike or not? I just personally wouldn't, because I just don't see the upgrade. But, maybe you revisit that in the offseason if something makes sense. I think you just try to do something smaller to see if you can get another, guard that can keep up with guards better.
I think Yeah, I the last thing I would say, I mean, on the defensive, I think we are all kind of in agreement. He's not having a great defensive year. Um, Kind of alluding to what Daniel says, that he plays a lot. He plays a lot of basketball. He does a lot on the court. He played in the Olympics, and when I see him, just be like, oh well, I'm just not going to foul you. There's value there. You can say he's a smart defender because if there is one thing most of the Nuggets do well, it's not fouling. But obviously, sitting in drop coverage, waiting for a guard to get chased around a screen and have a full running attack at him isn't really effective. Um, Him playing and being more engaged on the defensive end, we talk about and we have seen him play at the level and that be much more collectively effective for Denver, where you're not so much. I almost feel like it's like preemptively compromising the defense. The way they're playing right now is they're just like, okay, we're just like, going to accept being in rotation. Like that's
Yeah.
just what we're going to do. And that isn't really being very effective. But the only way I see Jokic wanting and being willing to do that is if he has the energy to, and the only way he's going to have the energy to if he's not doing a bunch of other things, if he's not carrying as much weight offensively, if he's not playing as many minutes. So that is maybe something I think about as we get into, I guess, towards the trade deadline. Daniel also talks about having a Jokic stagger for Saric, bringing Saric back into the unit, seeing if we can buy a few more minutes for Jokic without killing the team. I think I wouldn't hate that in the specific context that we've talked about, right? Obviously, DJ can keep playing regularly, but not constantly. I guess I think there's something there, something to that. And maybe there is a trade that gives them enough reinforcements elsewhere that maybe helps. So, obviously, I think we all have our own ideas about that. But Peter, I know you, so you're out on the, maybe not out, but leaning away from the trade Michael Porter idea right now. CT, how about you? How do you feel about, I mean, not just trading Mike really, but really any trades that they could potentially make heading into the deadline?
Yeah, I think for me, I think the trades just aren't needle moving moves. Like if you look at a trade for Levine, you look at a trade for, I mean, Jimmy Butler now, it looks like he's going to be dealt pretty soon. um,
Maybe.
yeah, I mean, like I don't think any of these moves, like people are saying, get Jokic a regular number two guy and this and that. It's just like I don't see where Levine upgrade helps like their defense for sure, definitely not. And you get smaller around Jokic, which is a problem. You need to have guys who are tall and athletic around Jokic, and downsizing the perimeter has just always been a problem. Like you look at the year where they had Bones and Bryn Forbes and Facu and all those guys. Like it was just the defense was really, really terrible.
Will Barton is a 3.
Right, right. You have to have height and length around Yoke in order for it to work. And like again, if you swapped like Levine for Murray, would that be something maybe I would be more on board with? I mean, yeah, in the summertime, but and again, I don't think Mike's like some untouchable piece, but I do think that a lot of Nuggets fans kind of undervalue and underrate what he brings to the table as far as being a tall wing shooter for Jokic, a guy who's a good release valve for him, getting double teamed in the post or on pick and rolls and things like that. But yeah, I don't think there's like a needle moving move in order for to move him. Like I don't think a Cam Johnson trade would like vault the Nuggets up a spot, to like the top of the West. I don't think trading Levine for him like would be all that great either. Um,
How about other,
so
maybe like smaller scale deals?
yeah, I think if they could get like a point of attack defender, like a Keon Ellis or somebody like that, definitely. Because I think the Nuggets are just they need like guys who they can fill out the rotation with in the playoffs. And as right now, I don't know if they have more than 4 to 5 guys really that you can count on to play in the playoffs. As much as I want to believe Watson and Russ could play in the playoffs, I don't know until we actually get there because Watson got benched last year, and Russ obviously didn't have a good playoffs last year. And I believe in I'm a Julian believer. Even though his defense has been really bad, I think by the end of the year, I think he'll be in a spot at least experience-wise, that he'll be there at least to try to be more of a spark plug off the bench offensively. But yeah, I mean the defense has been woeful for sure. But I think there's going to be some ways you can compensate for that. And who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
somebody else can surprise. Like in the back end of the rotation. I'm not sure, but definitely have to try out some more options and see if that'll work.
Maybe Malone can play more zone when Strother's in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked the zone, especially that Kings game. The zone looked really good. The Nuggets have the athletes for it. They have the perimeter guys and Watson, Brown, Russ at the top of that zone looked really good as well. So, I would like to see more of that. Definitely more mix and match and coverage defensively for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not maybe they have the cumulative athletes and length to do it. I wish they wouldn't do it. I don't like it as a reaction. Like, I wish if you're going to do a zone, do it because you want to and do it because you're going to take initiative out of the zone. But that's a possibility. I think if it's me, if I'm Calvin at the deadline, I would just call and see, like, I believe in Strother. I think he'll be a good NBA player at some point. If they were going to make a trade, I think doing something like packaging Strother and Zeke together for someone who can play, who you can maybe count on, I think is maybe a balance between Project Dynasty, which I still think is on the table. I think you're doing a good job. You're hitting on most of your draft picks for the most part. And it wouldn't be a mark against Strother if he was traded like this. It's actually maybe even a credit to him that he's shown enough that, you can see the player in him. But yeah, if you moved him for like a front court player that maybe meant you could relieve Jokic or Aaron Gordon a little bit, or a guard who can play some defense and shoot threes, any kind of like a better eighth, honestly, like a better eighth man than what Denver has right now. I would feel pretty good about that. But for the most part, I'm also happy if they don't do. I get that you don't want to be complacent, but I think this summer Denver will have a lot more. You'll have the evidence, the data of the playoffs to say, okay, we see where we're at, and you'll have a lot more flexibility of what you can do in terms of if you want to make changes. Well, now you have options. Now the guys who you extended, whoever you feel like you need to trade, you can trade. And yeah, that's I think you'll be in a more of a position to pivot if that's what you want to do. But that's where I am.
Yep. That's fair.
I agree.
But yeah.
But again, the West is just completely mid too, other than OKC. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Nuggets can go on a run and get like a top 3 seed if health, goes their way and AG comes back and, the guys can stay healthy. I think the West is worse this year than last year, other than OKC, but I'm still not fully convinced OKC is a juggernaut playoff team. So,
well, the elephant in the room is OKC doesn't have a good and reliable number 2 option. I mean, Jalen Williams shit the bed in the playoffs last year, and then he was awful in the NBA Cup final game against the Bucks. So, yeah, they've still got some playoff questions to answer, even though they are a very good team.
Yeah, obviously they're very good, but
they're not unbeatable.
No, definitely not.
It's like, okay, if you can contain SGA, not beat him, but if you can mitigate his impact, then who beats you? I think that's a question for them.
He's not going to get those foul calls in the playoffs. Like, he's not going to get that extent of the foul calls.
I would hope not, and especially for a matchup like Denver. I feel like Denver has the guys. I feel like Denver has the archetypes of defenders that you would want against a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Christian, Peyton, Aaron, all very solid defensively. Rope brings this up that is just really bad. Is he as bad defense? Is it just me? Am I like the only one who doesn't think Mike is like the garbage defender that I feel like?
He knows where to be a lot better, but he still isn't very impactful. Like I'll see him tag guys and like be there in time for the big that catches it, and he puts his hands up,
Yeah,
and
that's
the
a
big
problem.
and the big just like collects himself, realizes, oh yeah, I'm way bigger, turns and just dunks or finishes over him. Like he added some muscle, but I think he needs to add like 5 to 10 more pounds to actually be like an impactful defender. Like when the big rolls to the rim and he's the last line of defense.
Maybe so, but I also
He
feel
uses
like
his hands too much instead of just
that.
being vertical. Like he's 6'10",
Yeah.
just literally stand there vertical.
That's all I'm asking from you. Me personally, like you're not always going to stop every basket, but yeah, I just don't feel like he's like god awful. To be
He's
honest,
gotten better, but he
yeah,
used to
that's
be
just
like
me.
unplayable.
He used to be Strother level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, I think we should wrap up. The game is about to start. Before we go, CT, do you have anything you want to plug?
No, nothing really in the works for now. I actually do have a draft board coming out pretty soon. First one of the
Ooh.
year. Yep, first
Always be
draft board of the year coming out.
scouting. I see you.
Yep, should be a fun class coming up. And I'm sure much divide on who the best prospect is in the class at this point. So I do have a big board coming out relatively soon. But other than that, just keeping it tuned with the Nugget stuff. But thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it. Always a
Of
good time
course.
coming on the show.
Peter, anything new you've learned being in Alaska that you want to share with us?
No, I'll just keep it basketball. I just want to give a shout out to all my friends, in Suns Nation. Budenholzer, great hire. You guys are killing it. Wait, what's that? Oh, Suns are 15 and 17, 11th in the West. Damn. Hope you get Butler. Otherwise, it's gonna be a long
All
season
right.
in the Valley.
I'll be sure to clip that for you so you can share it later. Okay. Well, I've been doing player grades. I will be caught up soon. I had fun with my family and friends at the holidays, but yeah, new year should be fun. You can. Oh, also, so predictions: Spurs Nuggets should be a win. Knock on wood.
I don't know. I'm a bit nervous with no AG tonight, but
I abstain again. I'm tired of making predictions.
That's fair. I have a feeling. I mean, Wembanyama has been great. I think he fouls out.
Ooh.
That's my prediction. But yeah, you can find us at Four Corner Pod on the Twitters. You can find us at Four Corners Nuggets Podcast on YouTube as well. Thanks for everyone popping into the show and commenting and liking and subscribing, all free. We really appreciate that. And tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your cousins. Yeah, we appreciate you. And yeah, you can find Peter at Bucket since 88. Also, me at Rayvon Hackshaw on the Twitter, CT at CT Phaser24 on the Twitters. Still don't like Elon Musk. Not a fan. But that's where the community seems to be still. We'll see about the blue sky. It's growing. I know people are having a good time over there too. I think I'm Rayvon Hackshaw at Blue Sky. And I don't know if you guys are on Blue Sky or not, but
I'm not.
Okay. Well, it might happen. We'll see. The tide may shift. We'll see what happens. Thanks for listening. And as always, go Nuggets.